Now, let's go back to the document we were looking at a few minutes ago. We now have two independent sources concerning the origin of the book of Matthew. This first one states Matthew originally did not contain the account of the birth and life of Jesus. And the second one was a quote from Papias, who lived around 60 AD to 130 AD. And he said, Matthew compiled the sayings in the Hebrew language, and everyone translated them as well as he could. The account of Matthew that we have is not in Hebrew or even Aramaic. Our version is written in Greek. So what we have is one of these translations from the original sayings of Matthew. But that's not all we have. We also have material that was added or changed by someone at a later time. According to these two witnesses, someone later on must have added the account of the birth of Christ to Matthew. Those are two witnesses. Let's look briefly at a third. This third one I only want to go through quickly just to let you know that there is a third witness. The source for this material was in a dissertation by Glenn Koch in 1976. This third witness is a writing in about the year 375 AD by Epiphanius. He is also aware that there are copies of Matthew which do not contain the events surrounding the birth of Jesus Christ. So, what we have so far are three independent witnesses confirming that early versions of Matthew were significantly different than what we have today, especially when it comes to the story about the birth of Jesus. We now see that the text of Matthew has been changed, but who did it and why? There was a study which was published in the spring 2002 edition of Perspectives in Religious Studies by Derek Dodson. It was titled Dreams, the Ancient Novels, and the Gospel of Matthew, an intertextual study. In this 13-page article, Mr. Dodson compares the dreams found in ancient Greek novels with the dreams found in the Gospel of Matthew. And what he finds will shed some light on the editor of Matthew. This study does a detailed analysis and compares the style of dreams in Greek novels to dreams in Matthew. And what the study reveals is that the use of dreams in Matthew is very similar to the use of dreams in Greek literature. This means that either the original author of Matthew also happened to be a writer familiar with this type of Greek literature, or, more likely, the same person who later added the extra material to Matthew was also familiar with Greek novels. This person could also have been the one who translated Matthew into Greek, and at the same time, he used his Greek writing skills to transform the original Matthew into what he thought was a much more exciting story. This is similar to what you might find by comparing a book which you've read to a movie at a theater which was based on that same book. They can be quite a bit different. The movie often goes way beyond what was in the book. Take a movie such as The Ten Commandments and compare it with the original account in the Bible. There are all kinds of dramatic events in the movie which are not anywhere in the original. And that's what we have today in Matthew, an exaggerated version of the original. We have now gone over supporting evidence of Matthew being changed by a later editor. We also have a good idea of the creative license that this person used in writing his version of the gospel. There are essentially three categories of changes that were done to Matthew. We've already looked at the additions to the text, such as nearly the entire birth account. But the changes go beyond just additions. There are also exaggerations, where the writer changed the Gospel of Matthew in order to enhance the story. Let's look at two examples of this. The first example is in Matthew 8:28, which is an account of when Jesus meets either one or two people who are possessed by demons. He later casts out these demons. The verse in Matthew reads, And when he came to the other side, into the country of the Gadarenes, there met him 2 possessed with demons, coming forth out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no man could pass by that way. So, the facts in Matthew that we want to look at are, he says that there were 2 people who were possessed, and that they were so fierce that no man could pass by that way. 2 people, nobody could pass by. But that's not what the other Gospels say. In Mark, we read the same account, but he says there is only 1 man, not 2. And also, he only says that the man could not be bound anymore, even with a chain. Nothing is mentioned about being so fierce that nobody could pass by, as we read in Matthew. In Luke, we also see that there was only 1 man. And also that he was bound and able to break the bands apart. In comparing Matthew to Mark and Luke, we start to see a pattern of exaggeration in Matthew. Matthew says there were 2 people who were possessed with demons that Jesus met. Mark and Luke say only 1. Matthew says they were so fierce that nobody could pass by that way. Mark and Luke only say that he could not be bound. This is just one example of what the editor of Matthew did to enhance the story. Here's a second example. Jesus meets either 1 or 2 blind men near Jericho and gives them their sight. Again, we see the exaggeration in Matthew. Matthew says 2 blind men were healed by Jesus. On the other hand, Mark and Luke agree that only 1 blind man was healed. Now we've gone over 2 categories of changes that were done to Matthew. First, there were additions to the text, such as most of the birth narrative in the first 2 chapters. Second, there were the exaggerations. And third, we also have many verses which are in the wrong place. This type of problem is found throughout Matthew. It's a serious issue because using the wrong context can give the wrong meaning. So far, we've seen the evidence of Matthew being changed, and we reviewed the types of problems found in Matthew. So, what do we do about this? It seems we have 3 choices. Number 1, we could leave Matthew as it is. However, this doesn't seem to be a good solution. The Bible is no place for a work of fiction. Number 2, we could remove it entirely. Although this might be necessary, we may not have to go this far as long as we can find another reasonable solution. Number 3, we can fix it. We have 3 other gospel accounts, so it should be possible to accurately reconstruct Matthew. We can also look at the type of changes that were made to Matthew. This can show us what kind of material to look for that was changed. Accordingly, this third option is the one followed by the updated version. The text of Matthew has been reconstructed. The process followed to reconstruct Matthew consisted of 3 general steps. The first step was to remove the material in Matthew which could not be found anywhere else. Since we already know that the extra birth account managed to get in, we have no way of knowing if anything else that was added is valid or not. So if we can't find the material somewhere else, such as Mark, Luke, or John, it was not included in Matthew. Also, any exaggerations or other types of changes were removed or made to conform to the other accounts. The second step was to keep the material that was found elsewhere. However, it had to be reorganized so it would be in the right context. The third and last step was that after all of this, it became apparent that the traditional chapter and verse numbering system could not be kept. So the book of Matthew was renumbered based on its new sequence. If you would like more information on what was changed and why, there are supporting documents on the updated.org website. The website also contains conversion charts between the traditional numbering system and the new one.